Martin, Christmas time has approached again, but it's Christ's day. We got to keep Christ in Jesus. And I think the toys we've been giving our non existent children have been sending the wrong message. So today, instead of Snake Mountain or Barbie dolls or any of that Satanism, we're giving them a tape, Deception of a Generation, the best Christmas catalog you'll ever come across.
Okay, well, I'll start us off here. I've got my Gary Greenwald action figure. And as you can see by his garish green shirt, he is a God-fearing man. And he goes with this little guy here, Phil Phillips, who, don't be deceived by his resemblance to Donald Trump. He is also a God-fearing man.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I have to say about them. They're both very safe, very dull.
They'll misquote a Bible verse if you hit a button on their back.
I will say of Phil Phillips, his secret strength is his knowledge of 80s cartoons.
He does seem to have just watched them for a while. He seems to know what he's talking about.
Phil Phillips has binge watched too many episodes of He-Man. It's my takeaway from Deception of a Generation.
Just seems a little too in touch with the lore for someone intending to criticize it.
It's what he whips out the Power of Point Dread, which is like a noteworthy He-Man mini comic, and he's like, "Hey, let's have a look through this." And it's like, "Oh my god, how much stuff have you brought with you?"
This is my son's. He's crying right now. All right. Well, we decided for if we air this around Christmas, I kind of had an idea for an unconventional Christmas episode because it has to do with Christ, and because it's basically a toy catalog, and I think if you showed this to a child, it would just make them want the toys they're seeing playing with. We watched an old 1985, I suppose, PSA documentary called Deception of a Generation. This was, I don't know, it looks like this aired on TV and was also put on videotape by a organization called the Eagle's Nest, a bunch of evangelical lunatics who are trying to spread the word that toys and cartoons that are meant to sell toys are evil and Satanist. And it turns out they're only one of those two things, And we just got to enjoy almost 2 hours of these two grown men reacting in horror to 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo and Smurfs and He-Man.
Yeah. Gary Greenwald is the presenter of this, and I had to look up to see what happened to Gary Greenwald. I was desperate to find a Gary Greenwald controversy that had happened recently. I was really hoping there was something. There was nothing. It was very disappointing.
Damn it. What about Phil Phillips?
Nothing for Phil Phillips either. He's got ADD, but that's not really a controversy. That's just a fact that I found out about him. Nothing else really going on with Phil Phillips. But Gary Greenwald, I discovered, had done a couple of other specials all about the dangers of various things throughout the 80s that kids liked. Would you like me to read you the titles of Gary Greenwald's other media releases?
I'm anxious to hear them.
1981, The Punk Called Rock, in which Greenwald exposes satanic subliminal messages in the popular music of the era. 1983, Marijuana, The Heavenly Deception. 1983 again, Rock's Primal Scream, in which Greenwald shows examples of how Satan uses rock music to control listeners. He then did Deception of a Generation, and then he wrote a book called something about prophets. Doesn't sound very interesting. And in 2003, he wrote a book called Seductions Exposed, The Spiritual Dynamics of Relationships, in which he examines how abusive relationships and codependent relationships begin. And amongst the factors that cause them, supposedly, are cursing yourself through forbidden statues, jewelry, and practices. So I'm not sure it was a particularly good self-help book.
I was gonna say, it's like, okay, it sounds like his heart's in the right place. And you mentioned the supposed causes. It's like, oh well, all right. Yeah, I'm glad he took 80s rock down a peg. I just imagine him being like, and I was truly disturbed by what I saw. She sings that she's like a virgin, which I believe is supposed to take the Virgin Mary's name in vain to be imitating when we can have no equal idols.
It's hard out of the two maniacs on this to to decide who is the more unhinged, I think. At one point, I thought Gary was fairly sane, but he goes off the deep end about 10 minutes in and he doesn't come back.
No.
And in his weird Mr. Rogers set, which I thought was like a completely fake set. Do you know the backdrop where you can see like a street outside?
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's obviously just a backdrop he's stuck up. No, you'd be wrong because about 40 minutes in, a guy just walks past. Like you see this guy in the background. Now, it might have been a moving backdrop, but I suspect actually we were just in Gary's house.
It's just a loop of the duplicate Homer from the episode of The Simpsons walking.
That might be it. It might just be a loop, but I don't know.
Cartoons don't have to be totally realistic.
Hey, is that Gary Greenwald?
So the dynamic it strikes me as is that, like, have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live sketches, like recent ones, where Kyle Mooney, I think, and I'm blanking on the other comedian's name, play Eric and Donald Jr. and do like press interviews for Trump, and Eric is like a little more in tune and really conniving, and then Donald Jr. is like a child, kind of just
Yeah.
going along with it.
Yeah.
And that's how it's. I think Gary is like a little more in tune, and then Phil is like, you see Phil Phillips just kind of have fun with some of these toys, at least briefly.
I think it
And
was
he's
Gary who seemed to be having the fun, I thought, because he was like when he finds that Sector's puppet later on, and he's like, "Hey, look, you can put your hand in this." Like he's going for like 5 minutes, just flapping this giant bug around the set, and Phil's just looking at him like, "What the hell is he doing?"
Well, wasn't Phil changing his voice on Snake Mountain too?
No, Gary was the beardo, and Phil
Uh
is the Donald Trump lookalike.
I must be a little confused then.
You've switched your Phils and you switched your alliterative names around.
Of course, I've switched my evangelical lunatics.
Yes. It's easily done. They've all got the same initial.
So yeah, this one is Deception of a Generation, and it's all about just spreading the word that cartoons and the toys they sell are satanic. And the big opener for this is, of all things, 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
It's like the first thing they really want to light on fire and take a bite out of is Scooby-Doo. Because I guess, to be fair to their point, I think 13 Ghosts was one of the earlier series that actually acknowledges the occult. Like in the first Scooby-Doo series, it's a bunch of crooks in disguise, and in this one, they've got Vincent Van Ghoul, who's like a cartoon Doctor Strange, voiced by Vincent Price,
Yeah.
and he takes them to a portal to like what they call the evil world or something, the evil realm.
Yes. Very it was where he speaks to a big witch ghost.
Yeah,
A fine performance for Vincent Price. I had no idea there was a Scooby-Doo special with Vincent Price in it.
I think it was a series.
Ah.
I think it was like maybe, yeah, the third, was it like one episode for each ghost? The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, okay. I
I
didn't know
wonder if
this
it's
was
precisely one per ghost that they had to go hunt down.
was Vincent Price in
Um,
all of them?
yeah, it's precisely 13 episodes.
Oh,
Vincent Price is listed among the main cast when I look at the Wikipedia article. I
okay.
don't know if he's in necessarily every single one, but it does. I know that there's been recent Scooby-Doo cartoons that bring him back as well. I wonder who did they get to. I'm going down a rabbit hole. Scooby, because I wonder who does the voice post Vincent Price.
Hmm.
Vincent Van Ghoul. Oh, Maurice LaMarche takes over as
I
him in
nearly
more
said
recent.
probably Maurice Marsh, but I
Yeah,
thought
no,
no,
I
he's
don't
never
know.
done Vincent Price. But
Yeah, I don't know who else it would be. It's got to be Maurice LaMarche.
You know, you've been watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon, and it's amazing to me to see what's being brought forth in a cartoon. We've seen spell books, occultic amulets, we saw a crystal ball, astral projection to the evil zone, all of this in a children's cartoon. Now, I've got a guest today. His name is Phil Phillips. He's from Texas. He has been involved in missions work in his life, and he has now felt called to study the effects of cartoons and children's toys and even TV programs upon our children today. And I'd like to introduce a young man. And Phil, God bless you, and it's good to see you today.
Pleasure being here today.
Now, Phil, I'll tell you what, 14 years ago, Scooby-Doo was a lot different than what we see today, and I could hardly recognize it. Can you tell me what's going on in this cartoon?
Yes, there's a vast movement toward the occult within the cartoon and toy industry. Most people don't realize that 80% of all cartoons deal directly with the occult, and 40% of the toys on the market have occultic influence, and these are the most popular.
He does every celebrity impersonation going, Maurice LaMarche. All like those old celebrities, he seems to be able to do every single one of them. So
Oh, completely.
I'm glad they got him in.
Well, I imagine it's like only a step away from like his Orson Welles, even. Like,
Yeah. Has Orson Welles ever been in Scooby-Doo?
you know, he's been in the Muppets. I'm Orson.
Interesting Orson Welles fact. Larry Hama, the guy who created a lot of the G.I. Joe characters and wrote the comics, always said that he imagined Cobra Commander to speak with the voice of Orson Welles. And then the cartoon came along and gave him like this shrill, high-pitched voice.
Of course. So Orson Welles himself has never guested in Scooby-Doo, but there's at one point an episodic villain called Orson Kane, who's clearly a caricature of Orson Welles, voiced by Kenneth Mars.
Oh, fantastic. I love seeing Kenneth Mars show up.
His name clearly being a parody of Citizen Kane as well.
I see. Citizen Scoob, directed by Orson Welles.
Mountains and mountains of Scooby snacks. Offer me one and I'll suck you off.
Have you ever seen like that where people were doing like comedy Orson Welles quotes that they'd made up? And someone had done one about like Super Mario. He's talking about Super Mario. My son has the Super Mario game. It's absolutely delightful. It will while away the hours just playing as a plumber. It really is quite charming. Does he have Donkey Kong? Do not speak to me about that beast.
Fucking wood is. We come back to Orson Welles a lot on this show.
It's ever since the Transformers the movie, he shows
Yeah.
up all the time.
Transformers get a shout out in Deception of a Generation as well. Oh, yeah. Which I'm all at a loss for how the robots can be satanic. It's not exactly magic. Like, give me a break here.
I think that they switch logic at some point in the episode, and they start talking about cartoons promoting violence through the use of weapons. So G.I. Joe and Transformers, they say, are promoting the use of weapons and indoctrinating children, and worrying the Russians, supposedly. So that's how they get onto Transformers. It's a very tenuous argument, I think, by that point. Once they've gotten He-Man out of the way, they start losing. They start losing their way. I do enjoy the irony of the fact that they are like really trying to demolish and take down these supposedly occult cartoons, and yet Gary Greenwald has gone out and spent a fortune on He-Man merchandise.
Just him leaving the toy store like, and just you wait, I'll use this purchase to destroy you. And like, they're just like, thanks for the $50. I don't.
Yeah. Hey, that guy just bought 3 Snake Mountains.
I feel like He-Man is like maybe the big sticking point of the special. Arguably, it's I think the one they kind of go in the deepest on.
I guess it's got all the magic, and it's got sort of
yeah,
monstrous, demonic-looking characters. And
it's He-Man and She-Ra. are kind of the two big ones.
They really sort of look at Skeletor here. He's levitating in a classic levitation pose. Okay.
God, yeah, that is like I guess it's like the whole, there is the clear fact that the evangelical nationalism is just like a dressing up for racism, and these guys just like seem to hate martial arts and meditation.
What was their? I did not understand the beef with martial arts. Is there any martial arts in this one? Why do you
Yeah,
care?
like-
What difference does that make to any of the
I guess it's
arguments you've
like-
made?
I think a very ignorant person would connect it to Buddhism, which is in turn, and belief in Chi, which is in turn unchristian. Just stupid.
They mentioned yoga as well at one point, just like a passing reference to yoga. But they never come back to that, presumably because they have no argument that relates to
It was-
any character doing yoga in these cartoons.
There to this day, just recently, it's like, I'm not a particularly religious person. I file myself as raised Catholic. Make of that what you will. And like to this, you know people in high school who are very religious, and you're like, oh, that's cute. I don't know. And then one day that you see them post a TikTok to their Instagram that's like modern portals for demons, rock music, yoga, and I'm like, oh, it's not cute. You're fucking psychotic in 2022. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's still that persistent belief. Yeah, I guess just yoga and martial arts being manners of healing not related to prayer. They are cultist.
I guess this is it. Yeah, that's just it's very much just a fear of anything remotely different, any different teaching or school of thought. These two aren't into it, and they try and just wave their finger at it and go occultism. And it's like, no, it's just a rat microphone on a plastic toy, sir. It's not. There's nothing to be concerned about. And then I like the feedback he gets when he tries to use Snake Mountain. He just pulls Snake Mountain out of nowhere. I don't know where it was, and he dumps it on the table. And then the other guy, Phil Phillips, goes, well, that's clearly satanic. And he's like, there's a voice thing here. And he turns it on and there's just this explosion of feedback. And he's like, well, let me just turn it down here. And then he just speaks into it. And they seems to be having a great time.
Yeah. I like to imagine it like cuts back and forth between the two, and every time it goes back to Gary, he just has like a previously unseen piece of Skeletor regalia just upon him. I have the Skeletor hat as well, very comfortable, but occultic, but I will demonstrate.
Now, who lives in Snake Mountain?
Well, Skeletor lives in Snake Mountain.
Could we talk about Snake Mountain? for
Sure,
just a
let's
minute?
take a look at it.
Now, we have a toy that we got at the store, which is called simply Snake Mountain. I thought I'd get this toy up here if we can get that on the screen. And here's the snake and all. I mean, this is definitely an occultic toy. And it's got an interesting little feature here. I'm going to turn it on. It can actually transform your voice from your regular voice to that of an occultic hero. Is that correct? So let's get a Skeletor type of voice. Let me turn this on here. I think I'm getting it too loud. Skeletor, the master of the universe. Does that give you kind of an example of...
Yeah, you should see the commercial they play with it. You know, it transforms your voice into that of an evil.
So little
voice.
children would actually use that to even identify more with these occultic heroes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just cuts back to him and he's just got the staff in his hand and he's just like, so anyway, Phil, what do you think of the dangers of people becoming addicted to this stuff?
I like to, they look at Skeletor and they're like, here's Skeletor, a skeletal creature.
He's got an ugly face there. And I was like, oh, come on. There's a great line from Gary Greenwald where he goes, so Phil, how harmless are the characters in He-Man? And like I immediately just had this flashback to like Orko just like throwing a pie at someone. and Phil, but it goes to Phil and he's like, very harmful and very dangerous. It's like, oh, okay.
We can't let the children see Cringer. Like, come on.
He calls upon demonic spirits. No, I don't think he does, Phil. You've watched enough episodes of He-Man to know that this isn't the case. You clearly watched The Mystery of Many Faces, and I
Many
think you've
Faces,
seen
who
some
they do
others.
not grasp the pun of his name once. They just call him Many Faces.
Yeah, you're missing out on the Man E Faces thing. It's a disaster. They mispronounced somebody else as well, but I can't remember which character that is. There's another character they completely get wrong at some point.
um I gave this 2 stars on Letterboxd because I kind of just gave enjoyment value to the cartoon clips they showed. You know, like they would go to like long clips of cartoon because like they have a TV in the middle of them, and it almost and they specify they're like, and we don't search for these clips. This is just what comes up when we turn on the TV, like, which I
Well,
think is bullshit. But
he
how long
backpedals on
they
that.
wait.
He backpedals on that later, and he's just like, "So I recorded all of these." It's like, it's not what you said earlier, Gary. You said you just switched it on. So I think Gary has just been sitting there binge watching children's cartoons for weeks because he'd watched clearly a couple of different episodes of He-Man, She-Ra, G.I. Joe, the Littles, which I've
The
never
little,
seen.
the one he picks out the one clip of the Littles with the Egyptian occultists, which I don't think was like really that big a thing on the show.
I don't think it must have been like a one-off Egypt set episode.
Oh, completely.
But in fairness, when that clip came up, I was just like, yeah, all right, fair enough. That one is a bit that one does kind of look like an occult ritual, I'll give you that.
The one that you didn't grow up with might be a little bit evil, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Then there's Dungeons and Dragons is another show that we just haven't really talked about on the pod or anything really. Is it the big thing that stuck out to me is that I think there's a character called Shadow Keeper who I almost thought they called him or them Shadow Weaver so shortly after the She-Ra clip. I was a little confused.
Oh no, they get the name right, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
They're all right with their details. Phil
Yeah.
knows his stuff. He's watched all this. He's got the comics, he's got the figures, he's got the cartoons. He knows the origin of Many Faces. It's like, oh well, fair enough, Phil. At least you're getting your details right for the most
Well, it's
part.
lucky they got a clip from She-Ra mostly of Shadow Weaver, because if they showed Hordak, it'd just be like, well, he's just a successful man of industry. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
it fades out when they get to the Hordak bit of the intro, and it just cuts back to them. They're secret Hordak fans, obviously. Let's not bring Hordak into this, Phil.
I want to say I really love the retro Shadow Weaver. I think the Netflix She-Ra cartoon does almost everyone a little bit better, but I think Shadow Weaver in that show is a little over. I love simplified, just like hooded Jawa Shadow Weaver. She kind of made me smile just to see.
Yeah, Shadow Weaver's a cool character. When we come to She-Ra, we'll have to do some good Shadow Weaver content.
Shadow Weaver, yeah.
I do like the bit where they're talking about the just kids that supposedly they know, and one of them tells a story about how somebody was listening to something on the radio and they kept saying God is the master of the universe, and the kid in the back went, no, he's not, He-Man's the master of the universe. And then another kid in a playground who was supposedly going, He-Man has more power than Jesus. He-Man has more power than Jesus. And to be fair, he's right, because Jesus never picked up a castle and threw it into space.
Jesus never lassoed the moon.
Jesus never lassoed the moon. Jesus never rode a giant tiger, nor did he punch a giant.
I bet I'm sure he fabricated that story. There's no way that happened.
Maybe it might have done. You never know. If it was like Phil's nephew and he was like, what you need to do, little boy,
Handed a script.
Just go in with this and just tell all the kids that Jesus is more powerful than all their heroes, and they will love you for it. And this kid goes into the playground and goes, you know, guys, Jesus is the most powerful hero of all. And then some other kid just went, hey, shut up. He-Man's more powerful than Jesus. And then punched him in the face and continued to say, He-Man is more powerful than Jesus until the end of recess.
Shit.
I also like the bit where he says, you know, sometimes in He-Man, the women, they're wearing negligee. And at first I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then I thought to myself, no, actually, there is like sometimes the sorceress is actually wearing negligee and it cuts to her like in bed when she gets like a message or something. But that's sort of few and far between, which was what made me think, Phil, you've watched a lot of episodes of him.
Yeah. Shadow Weaver needs to cover up, man. I don't. He seems to know a lot about He-Man in many faces.
He does.
Man, you know, and like I guess like on the subject of like the kids at recess, you know, credit where it's due, they're a little bit right about the predatory aspect of like especially when they go into like cereal commercials and they're like, oh, we can cereal commercials are so good at convincing parents to buy kids pure sugar. I'm like, okay, you know, you're not wrong about that. I don't think it's satanic. It's definitely like predatory. Like, so I think that's the proof we need to show that these two aren't like faking. Like the whole time I'm like, so what's your game here? Because I don't think anyone is like, I'm always looking for like, so what do you have to gain from convincing people of this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you like what? Because there's no way you actually believe this. Then they start making like small salient points throughout, and I'm like, oh, I think they actually just buy into their own bullshit. Like,
I think that's true, yeah. But like you say, there's never any overarching argument for it, really, other than, well, the toy companies are trying to make money. Yes, of course they are, you idiot. That's how advertising works.
right?
Like, he doesn't seem to understand that, well, the kids are going to be hassling their parents for this. Yeah. Yeah, they are, you morons. Like, yeah. But they
like
never...
I kept expecting that they'd be like, here's our alternative you can spend twice as much money on. But it seems they are just like anti-toy, and we should just have like Amish faceless dolls or something for the rest of time.
There's never a conspiracy theory, though, is there? There's never like, oh, the government are doing this to corrupt the kids, or the
Oh.
toy companies doing it to corrupt the kids, or this is like the Satanist influence at the toy companies or at TV stations. They never have like an overarching point or theory, or
Oh.
like there's nobody's really behind all this.
That's that's true. I was kind of hoping there'd be like, I don't know, they hassle Alan Oppenheimer for the headquarters of the cult leader or something. He kind of, there is like this boomer take where he's like, and you know, when I was a kid, I watched Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny, and now cartoons are all a cult. And it's like, so what, a duck surviving getting shot in the face isn't like is entirely wholesome and not within the realms of
Maybe the person that they bothered was not Alan Oppenheimer, but Chris Larter, and he threatened to kill them. And the line of inquiry quickly ended. Get off my property, you sons of bitches!
We reached out to who we thought was the voice of Cobra Commander by various sources, but was in fact Orson Welles. Orson Welles just like, yes, do come in.
Have some rosebud frozen peas. They're even better raw.
Nothing satanic about hills of peas. Jesus Christ.
Have you ever seen the like commercial outtakes where he's just berating a producer for telling him
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, Orson, could you say that again? No. The right reading is the one that I'm giving you. I'm sorry, Orson, you were right about that. And he just goes, yes, always.
Jesus Christ. There's a phenomenal bit where they get a Barbie and a Ken doll, and they're like, well, here's Barbie and Ken. They're perfect. They have perfect clothes. They have perfect faces. And Gary turns to Phil and goes, what do you think of this, Ken? I mean, Phil. And you look at Phil in his like plastic surgery Donald Trump looking shell. And it's like, I don't blame you for getting confused there, man.
There were moments where Phil looked at Gary like he was slightly unhinged, and I don't know if that was just they stuck him in a chair that was clearly too small for him to sit in, and he couldn't use the armrests properly because he's always sitting at a bit of a strange angle. But sometimes he looked at Gary like, this guy's unhinged, and I think I'm the reasonable person here. Gary, who points out that children cannot differentiate reality from fantasy. I'm not sure, Gary. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Just you because need to understand, Phil, is that children are fucking stupid. And...
Well, which one of them is it who tells the anecdote about when they were watching Lassie as a child, and Lassie runs into a burning barn, and they had like a complete meltdown, and they couldn't sleep for weeks. And in the end, their dad had to ring the producer. I don't know how they got his contact details. The producer of Lassie, so that the producer could talk to the kid and assure him it was just fantasy and that it was just a story and it wasn't real. And I just imagine this TV producer, like the 70s or the 60s or whatever. Like, excuse me, Mr. Brooks, we've got a small child on line 1 who needs some assurance that Lassie isn't real.
It's like another one.
Oh, God. Yeah, kid, Lassie ain't real. He's fine. Like smoking like a massive cigar and just being like, yeah, kid, you're the third kid that's called today. Lassie's gonna be all right. Don't you worry about him. We got plenty of lassies down here. Well, 4 of them have died this season alone, kid. Don't you worry about it.
Have you ever watched Nathan For You?
I've seen like bits of it.
Have you seen the bit where to make something work out, he has to convince a kid to not want to be an astronaut anymore? So he hires an actor to dress up as an astronaut and be like, space is horrifying. I've lost all my best friends in space. And just talk to this child. And that's what I imagine. It's just like, I lost all my best friends to Lassie.
Don't trust that dog, kid.
He deserved to burn in that fire. I just imagine it's like, listen, I can't get a hold of the producer for Lassie. Will you do a voice and pretend and comfort my child, Orson Welles?
What if the dog had actually died in the burning barn, and in fact, when they rang up, the producer was really like sweating nervously, like, oh my God, they know about the dog.
There ain't no real dog playing Lassie, and there never was.
Oh, Gary Greenwald, there is no such place.
Jesus Christ. Where were we? They make fun of the Smurfs for being gay.
Yeah, I mean, what could we call something like Smurfs? Is there anything occultic or dangerous about Smurfs?
Well, Smurfs happens to be the most popular Saturday morning cartoon since the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner hour. It's just entered into a long-term run, and it's hit an hour and a half on Saturday morning cartoons. But there are some things about Smurfs that we need to look at. First of all, you'll notice that they're depicted as blue with black lips.
Well, isn't that interesting?
And you know what happens to you when you die? You turn blue and your lips turn black.
In other words, these are depictive of dead creatures.
Right. And another thing is that Smurfs is an all-male community. And you say, oh, there's Smurfette. She's a female. Well, in one cartoon, she was depicted as transforming from a male to a female through magical power. And so the only female in the Smurfs is transformed from a male. She was not born a female.
No, what you're telling me then is that even Smurfs carry a homosexual connotation in that most of them are male.
I believe so.
But we're not going to blatantly say that Smurfs are evil We're just saying that they have all of these overtones that are leading that direction.
Well, let's take another look at Smurfs.
They also confuse Smurfette's origin and think that she was a male Smurf that became female, which is not the case.
Because they're like, well, the Smurfs, they're a homosexual community, aren't they? I'm like, no, what they're androgynous at best if they're all, because and they say a male Smurf turned into Smurfette, when the truth is that Gargamel created her to try and seduce them, which sounds absolutely insane when I say it out loud.
I was gonna say, maybe they were right about this.
Yeah, maybe Smurfs are a little fucked up. I don't know. Yeah. Let's see, Smurfs. I'm a little surprised Garfield wasn't put on blast for the sin of gluttony, because he must have been pretty big around this time.
Well, say what you want about Garfield. He may be a glutton, a hedonist, a jealous. He may embody all of the seven sins, but he is not an occultist.
Yeah.
But
Not
E.T.
like
now E.T. clearly was, apparently.
They kind of run out of cartoons and like start to lean on like Rambo and E.T. at a certain point.
Oh yeah, when he produced, to be fair, when he produces the Rambo machine gun, I did think, oh, maybe that is a bit inappropriate.
Yeah.
Another toy that he just pulls out of nowhere. So he'd gone down and he'd spent a lot of money.
Oh, completely. Man, it's like the grieving toy store is like almost out of business, and then Gary Greenwald waltzes on in. Man,
that guy just bought up the entire G.I. Joe 1985 toy line.
He's like sees reports on the sales going up on TV, like Hasbro at an all-time high of G.I. Joe and Transformer purchases, and he's just like, who is funding all of this? And the camera zooms out, he just has a pyramid of toys and shit for his own purposes. Like, who is purchasing all this? And it's fucking him.
Well, presumably afterwards he threw it into a fire, because he says that, well, I don't know if he would have done actually, but he does describe the Dungeons and Dragons like guidebooks and stuff. He says that people were throwing these into fires, and when they did this, the spirits were released from the books. I don't know if he meant that in a positive way, or that the spirits released and attacked people, or if they were freed and that saved people. I don't know. He leaves it pretty vague. I feel like he had discussed Dungeons and Dragons at another point, because he goes on about that a lot.
It was around this time there was a lot of hysteria around Dungeons and Dragons too, so yeah, I guess he could have meant like the concept as a whole is arcane.
I think they definitely fear Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and they get onto Thundercats at one point as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what exactly, they get some Thundercats details wrong, because Jargo was not Lion-O's father. They then get onto Star Wars, and they say that Obi is like Obi was some sort of witchcraft type chant. I can't remember, but apparently you chant Obi, 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 and it does something. Darth Vader looks like a Norse god, supposedly, but there's a great moment where Gary's like, I wish we could skip back to the picture of that Norse god, but I'm afraid we have to move on. Yeah, because you can't unpause your TV, Gary. That's why. You need a PowerPoint presentation. We can't go back to that. Yeah. It's too late.
He's a little afraid of it, I feel like. No, we can't. No, going back now.
I don't even remember seeing the image of the Norse god, though. So I think he just imagined the entire thing. And I don't think there's a Norse god that looks like Darth Vader, personally.
He channeled a spirit that manifested on the spot only to him, and he thought it was on the TV.
Oh my God, get that thing out of here.
What? Huh? What?
As we can see, Yoda here has got 3 fingers. And it's like they were looking for any sort of biblical reference they could get at that point. We're on to E.T., we're on to Yoda.
Well, it hangs on that picture of Yoda for what feels like an hour. And I know this isn't the case, but when I picture it in my mind's eye, it's that one meme image of Yoda like mid-frame screaming, you know, the one.
Oh, yeah.
They picked a really unflattering image of Yoda. Like,
Yeah.
isn't Star Wars like arguably a Christ allegory either way? Like,
Maybe, yeah. I guess you could argue the same for He-Man and for Thundercats and a lot of stuff
yeah,
back then, really. I thought
Thundercats did.
when they got to G.I. Joe and they were talking about the occult stuff, I thought they were going to bring in like Globulus. I thought that's the way it was going. And I was like, we didn't even get
Well,
that.
they take umbrage with Zartan having a hood by the sound of it, and that's about it. And then
best
and
they could
it's
do.
like, oh, you don't want to know what else is like underground in the He-Man universe. If just Zartan is giving you trouble.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised they didn't go more into like Cobra being kind of a cult type thing. Perhaps they didn't have time to watch G.I. Joe.
Well, maybe I'm getting the detail wrong. I almost get the impression because they're like, G.I. Joe used to be a guy in khakis, but now he's an occultist. Look at Zartan. And I wonder if they saw Zartan and mistook him for a good guy. Like,
Well, this
if
is
it like,
the weird sort of crux of their arguments, is that these cartoons are promoting evil and occultism is evil in their eyes. But all the characters they single out as being sort of creepy and occult, for the most part, are the villains.
yeah.
And the good guys don't seem to be. So
Yeah,
I guess
like, you could maybe like, I guess like they take umbrage with He-Man himself, but besides him, most of and those Thundercats using their martial arts, wag of the finger. But for the most part, yeah, it's like, okay, Scooby-Doo's trying to stop the witch ghost. What are you talking about? Like,
yeah, none of these things are promoting it. Like,
yeah.
even if, I mean, I don't think there's a problem with occultism, but even if there was, these cartoons aren't promoting occultism. They just happen to be part of the story.
He pulls out Mumra and he's like, and this is Mumra. They call him the ever living. And the other guy's like, what? Like, he was so taken aback by that title. It's like, yeah, Mumra is the bad guy. What do you mean?
There's a great bit where when he's showing him the Mumra figure, Gary just goes, "This is really impressive. It's a good likeness."
of an evil fiend in his pocket.
Wow, they really make him great, don't they? The sculpting is tremendous.
Oh man, could only be achieved by evil and witchcraft. I will burn this on my shelf next to Stake Mountain.
I'm just gonna gather up all this stuff and take it out back to burn it. Excuse me. But Gary does point out that if you take any of this stuff into your home, you are cursed.
Oh yes. You have broken one of the 10 commandments, I think they say.
If you take any of this stuff into your home, then you are damned for all time, supposedly.
What's so weird is that this wasn't like, I feel like today we really do not see this going on. Like, well, no, it's kind of gone from like satanic to like, oh, the cartoons are gay with like Steven Universe and Muppet Babies. I don't know.
Yeah, they're kind of these are the anti-woke guys of their day, aren't they, really?
Right.
And we've just moved on now to just disliking cartoons because they promote, you know, a tolerant lifestyle.
Yeah.
Rather than potential occultism and black magic.
And there was kind of a bridge there where, like, I think after your time, but right in mine, it was like Pokemon is Satan. So that didn't go away very quickly, but I do think it's just like changed over the years.
We went through that like Harry Potter is satanic period as well, didn't we, at one point?
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Harry Potter. And I'll always think of Ned Flanders reading to his kids. And so Harry Potter and all his little wizard friends went straight to hell for practicing witchcraft. Yay!
I bet Gary Greenwald had some views on Harry Potter.
Oh, completely.
I'm sure he would have done a Harry Potter special if he was still in business
Percy,
this time.
Percy Jackson special of pagan gods and stuff.
I wonder if he's still doing any specials. I don't think he is by the looks of it.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, he wouldn't have to do. I like to think he's the kind of guy who could make like a YouTube page, but still insists on like VHS specials in the year of our Lord 2022.
Ideally, hope he's still putting out VHS specials. Valiantly crusading against what even is there these days?
Do you think the MCU is like satanic secretly?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I'm sure he could make it. I mean, he doesn't like Superman in this. He's like, they're
Oh, yeah.
aliens. They have powers.
So, there's one point where he's just, I can't remember, I don't know which comic this character is from, but he's like, son of Satan. Well, they're getting more blatant now.
Pretty straightforward.
And Wonder Woman here, she's part of a satanic ritual, as you can see.
And
read a lot of comics too, is what I also gleaned from this.
Oh yeah.
Sitting there reading all of his DC comics for the past 6 months, trying to find satanic references.
Well, he like compares Prince Adam to he's like, well, he's a wimp at first. He's like Clark Kent. I'm like, okay, so you know what you're talking about. Like
he goes, his name is Adam, by the way, and Gary goes, oh, interesting. Puts the connection together, forgets people are just named Adam sometimes. There's a great line where one of them goes, he's worried about children sacrificing chickens to the moon god because they watch an episode of The Littles. The cultural significance of The Littles is children sacrificing chickens to the moon god after that one episode with the Egyptians in it. The Littles is like a cottagecore thing, I feel like. It's like, there's the little guys living in your house and they eat your breadcrumbs. There's little, I don't remember, like chicken decapitating. We'll get onto Care Bears briefly at one point, and yeah, we also get onto Rainbow Brights because they're looking at some cereal with Rainbow Brights on it. And Gary is like, so what does the rainbow represent, Phil? And Phil goes, the rainbow represents the networking of the new age. And but they don't expand on that. And I was like, what is the new age, Phil? What are we getting onto now? But he just glosses over and moves on. And I don't know, what is the new age? Is the new age the new satanic age? I have no idea. I'm more impressed that they look at Care Bears and Rainbow Bright, which are like nothing but rainbows. And then they come to the conclusion that the Smurfs are gay. Yeah, when he said what does the rainbow represent, I thought, oh, this is probably going to be them going, oh, it's something gay, but it's just, no, it represents the rise of the new order. Does it? In what sense? Can we expand upon this? But no, there's no time for that because Gary's got to get his sectors puppet out and just flap it around the studio for 10 minutes.
Let's look at another one here, which we found in the store called a Sectors, Warriors of Symbion. And it says, now the battle is in your hands. Very interesting. Can they see that? Let me take this out of the box, and I'll show you that it actually does some tricks. Now, this is where a child can identify with this and actually take this out of the box and put it on his hand, no less. So let me see if I can put my hand in here. Oh, no. Unbelievable. Get my fingers in the different glove parts here, and then this creature actually begins to open its mouth and move its legs. Isn't that incredible? And
so they can make it take on life.
It says here that it actually makes the wings move, so let me look at that. Isn't that amazing?
And do you remember those verses in the book of Revelation about the flying beast with the riders on them?
The flying beast with the riders on them. So this is
the winged horses.
This could actually be taken from Revelations.
Sure, it looks like it.
So yeah, it closes out. The special like kind of closes out with like, thank you for watching. I think it's like, God, they call it something because it's like the program is the Eagle's Nest, I think. And they have some weird name. It's like, oh, and this was an eagle claw or like an eagle call or something. The YouTube upload.
Was it like
Sorry.
I wonder if this was like a continuing series, if this was a show that was broadcast. I couldn't quite figure that out.
To fund more toys for Gary Greenwald.
Yeah, I guess it's all an elaborate plan by Gary Greenwald to fund his toy collecting addiction.
Man, gosh, yeah. His wife writes like a tell-all expose that he was just like playing with the toys. Like, man, yeah. Well, yeah. Is this like, you said you'd heard of this? Is this like pretty infamous in like the circles of classic toy characters and stuff?
Yeah, it's I always remember seeing the Snake Mountain clip where they're doing that, and He-Man fans just sort of relentlessly mocked it for years. And this is the first time I've seen it all the way through. It did not disappoint.
I'm glad Rainbow Bright got hers.
There are some weird targets, some really weird targets in this. It's insane. It's unhinged. It's insane, and it's like we said earlier, there doesn't seem to be any overall cohesive argument. It's just let's pick apart these things and say that it's occultism because a couple of words that we recognize from the Bible have been mentioned in some of the shows, and someone says evil at some point, and that must be occultism. But they never really get into telling us, like, I guess here is the thing: to make this point and to make this special, you have to believe yourself that occultism and magic and Satanism and the realm of evil and Vincent Price are all real things. And clearly, anyone who believes in all that is a psychopath. So right from the off, they're both a pair of crazy people.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't get any better from there. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll work in a salient points, like about the dangers of advertising and kids being targeted by stuff, I guess. I think that's all pretty harmless. Kids like toys, and you gotta sell toys to kids, and I don't think that's sinister. I think it's pretty open. I think it's pretty obvious. There's nothing subtle about any of this. It is what it is. And
Yeah. I'm
Phil
more
can
just
read as many He-Man mini comics as he likes, but it's not going to prove his points.
well, I was like positive there had to be some bizarre controversy with these guys. And I can't believe that maybe the most bizarre and problematic creator we've still encountered on the Animates, even with these two in our catalog, is the fucking BC comic strip guy.
Well, that's not quite true. I think the most controversial creator that we've come across is the Noid.
True.
That,
Speak
as
of him.
you know, he's a content creator. I think.
Jesus Christ. Well, man, yeah, if they were still rolling at it today, I actually think they'd probably switch targets to video games. I can really see that. Mario is satanic. This game, Animal Crossing, it's another cross of the beast people, and they have you talk to them and give them gifts. It's horrifying. Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah, the bit where he's like, "Oh, they're beast people. They're half lion and half man, just like in the Old Testament." Okay,
Right.
but why again? Why is that something you're concerned about? I'd like to. It's annoying that there's nobody in the room to challenge them on any of their
Right.
points. Like, you want someone to be there to debate them, but that doesn't happen. It's just two lunatics in a really cramped front room of someone's house,
Right.
playing with toys and talking about black magic. And I can
And
only
I'm sure
imagine
it
what the
was.
conversation was like after they wrapped up.
Oh, absolutely.
And a very awkward silence. What do you want to do now? Do you want to get dinner after this?
You
No.
want to come play with my Snake Mountain at my apartment? The
What?
wife's out of town.
The wife's out of town. The wife's always out of town.
This is a professional relationship, Gary. All right. I don't.
I'm
Man,
just gonna look up Gary Greenwald and see if he's got
sure.
a like a website or something.
I feel like you're gonna like raise your voice and go, "Dear God, he's dead."
That's usually what I find.
Right.
No, it's just his entry on the Rational Wiki.
So
Ooh.
that's maybe he goes by another. Do you think maybe they go by another pseudonym now? Like, do you think Phil Phillips and Gary Greenwald are like have new names or anything?
I hope they're alliterative again.
Yeah,
I think
they moved on to another point of the alphabet. I wouldn't surprise me if those are like stage names as for their pastor services and PSAs.
Are they Lenny Leonard and Carl Carlson?
My eye, I'm not supposed to get Snake Mountain in it. Well, I hope you found some potential Christmas gifts in this lavish toy showing that maybe had an overarching religious point.
Oh, I'll tell you what Gary Greenwald's doing these days. He's doing faith healing.
Wonderful. He's scamming people into death. Good for him.
Good for him.
Monstrous. Some of those monstrous shit in the world is fucking faith healing shit.
It seems like Phil Phillips turned out to be the more wholesome of the two in the long run. He just wrote a book about how he had attention deficit disorder.
He became president of the United States.
Greenwald v. Phillips, the election in 2024. I'm a staunch Greenwald man.
Jeez. Don't look at me. I voted for Phillips.
Who would you vote if it came down to Greenwald or Phillips? Who would you vote for?
I think Phillips just seems to have a little more of his shit together. Greenwald, I think, was a little all over the place and seemed like the less, just seemed the less put together of the two.
I think I'd probably agree. I think Phillips would be the more stable influence, and he at least has the temerity to sit down and read The Power of Point Dread.
Yeah, he does his research.
He does.
To read Point Dread, yeah.
He gets Man-E-Face's name wrong, but
true.
That's easily done.
Well, you know, in his defense, if he only read the comic, then maybe that's just how he pronounced it. I don't know. Maybe,
yeah. Although I get the feeling he definitely watched the episode about Man-E-Faces in the series. So
yeah, true. Yeah, I think he just wanted to be like, it's kind of like going to IHOP and you don't want to order the tutti frutti pancakes. You're just like, can I get the strawberry pancakes, please? So he's in this room with another grown man going, this is many faces. I think you mean Manny Faces. Many faces.
Boo! Lock him up! Lock him up! They just start throwing Man-E-Face's action figures at him.
And that's how Manny Faces became president.
Would you like to hear a bit more about Gary Greenwald while you're here?
Always.
Because I've just looked up about his faith healing. So would it surprise you to know that he's got 2 doctorates?
In like bullshit faith healing?
It doesn't say what they are, but there you go. He has a passion for activating God's people in prophecy, healing, and miracles. God, he's a doctor? God has graced Dr. Greenwald with many notable miracles, including the total restoration of a young man's broken neck. The young man,
of course.
Good Lord. What?
You said when you started to say he has a passion for activating God's powers, I thought you were going to say he has a passion for action figures. I'm like, yeah, no shit.
He has a passion for activating the microphone in Snake Mountain.
I like that's what he does, like the faith works with.
You
feel God within you. And all the feedback.
Dr. Greenwald once deafened a man by extreme feedback from the Snake Mountain microphone, after which he lost his license to practice.
The man was ailed by his ability to hear. I've healed him.
A well-known actress brought her son for prayer in Santa Ana, California. He had a spreading muscular disease and braces from hips to feet. After prayer, the son took off his braces and jumped off the 4-foot stage several times. The actress gave this testimony in many ministries and on television. I wonder who that was.
Does it say who? It doesn't say who the actress was.
It doesn't. Who's your guess? I'm gonna guess B. Arthur. There we go. Maybe.
That sounds like some pre-Scientology Juliette Lewis shit to me.
It did give me Scientology vibes.
Yeah.
Two
I don't know
people
if she has kids, but
2 people with colostomy bags in Brazil and Trinidad had the bags drop off after prayer, and their intestines and colons functioned perfectly. In Norway, a man with a crushed hip from a car rolling on him was called out by Dr. Greenwald. He walked with great pain on 2 walkers dragging his leg. After prayer, he walked without any limp and with no pain. Dr. Greenwald was pictured in the headlines of the Norwegian socialist newspaper.
oh,
What do you have to say about that?
I think you made a fool out of me. You proved me wrong.
There's so many of these, but they're all in San Francisco. A clothing store owner came with a totally degenerated spine. His wife said the wrong medications had caused the spine to cave in like a crushed Coke can.
What the fuck?
Unnecessary level of detail. My husband's spine is like a crushed Coke can. Can you help him, Dr. Greenwald?
So Dr. Greenwald is probably like, okay, here's my idea. I'm going to give him the right medication.
Revolutionary course of treatment. Dr. Greenwald asked the Lord for a creative miracle and saw the Lord restoring each vertebrae as he prayed. The man suddenly straightened up, totally healed, and jumped up several times, coming down on his backside on a padded church pew. I reckon that guy's wife would have been absolutely furious after this. You've been faking those degenerative spine disorders for 10 years, you lazy son of a bitch. You said you couldn't work.
It's fucking Grandpa Joe.
I was just thinking of Grandpa Joe. He started singing about having a golden ticket and danced out of the church.
Well, healing powers like this sound downright occultist to me. I don't know about you. I think we need to get this guy.
He
I think he's
healed a woman with
breaking.
a hunchback.
Wonderful.
And
He's just like a really good chiropractor by the sound of it. Like
this one's insane. In Costa Mesa, California, Dr. Greenwald prayed in proxy over the aunt of a young man who had been in a horrific fire, causing such deep damage to his face that he needed immediate skin grafts. They put skin grafts here, which I don't think is correct.
right.
Dr. Gary declared that everyone would be surprised at how God was able to restore his face. The next day, the skin grafts fell off the young man's face, leaving new skin to everyone's amazement. So Dr. Gary, in fact, peeled a man's face off by the sounds of it.
That man's name was Lassie.
Peel the dog's face off. I said peel his face off. The only way you'll learn. Well, there you go. There's a glittering career.
It was I am the celebrity whose child was saved by Dr. Greenwald. Me, Orson Welles.
What do you think of Phil Phillips? Do not speak to me of that beast.
Oh my god. Well,
I think we've exposed Gary Greenwald as a shyster.
Yeah.
And a con man. Almost certain.
I hope he knows the animates are coming for him.
I hope another cancellation from the animates.
Don't fuck with us animates fans. There's 60 of us.
77 subscribers as of last week.
Wonderful.
I hope Gary Greenwald is one of them. I hope Gary Greenwald can come and find me and heal my horrifically disfigured face and crushed vertebra.
I hope Gary Greenwald will find me and share Snake Mountain with me, and we'll just have a nice time.
He'd find the snake mountain in my loft and he'd be like, "What is this?" And then he'd throw it into a fire to release all the evil spirits from it. But they would rebound and melt off my face. And then he would heal my face with his powers.
Wonderful.
Join us next time when we discuss. Was this the Christmas episode? Maybe it was.
I think we had another in mind. I mean, honestly, we have a lot in the tank. I don't really know anymore, honestly.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Maybe, I guess.
Perhaps.
So let's get a Skeletor type of voice.